and welcome back to Characters Like Us, a podcast where we explore the art of diverse and inclusive storytelling. My name is Gitanshi, and I'm your host. I am a brown South Asian woman in my mid 20s with long black hair. I'm currently wearing a sleeveless black top, and in my background, you can see a gray couch, my desk, and also a bookshelf. And I have white walls around me. Today, we have a very special guest with us. Her name is Malavika Kannan. She is a Gen Z Tamil American writer whose work explores modern girlhood, identity, queer desire, and the intersections of the personal and the political. She is the author of All the Yellow Suns, a YA coming of rage novel inspired by her teenage years growing up in Florida, and her forthcoming adult debut, Unprecedented Times, set during the COVID-19 pandemic, will be coming out next year. A Stanford alumna, Malvika's journalism on race, gender, and South Asian identity appears in outlets like The Washington Post and Teen Vogue, and she shares her work with over 50,000 followers across social media. Based in Brooklyn, she also creates comics, including the viral Diary of a Wimpy Mal about survivorship and identity, and co hosts Girls Eat Girls, a sapphic supper club where she lives and writes. Welcome, Malavika, to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, so for image description, hi guys, I'm Malavika. I am also a brown South Asian woman, also now in my mid 20s. I'm sitting in my bedroom right now. I have white walls and I have a little gallery wall with like arts and crafts and postcards that I've put into frames that are sitting behind me. And I'm really grateful to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. We've had a couple of DMs over the years. I absolutely loved reading All the Yellow Suns, and
Thank you.
it was just, I feel like what I needed to read at the time, and also just like so inspiring for my own writing journey to like see another young queer South Asian girl just going out there and doing the thing. So I'm so excited for this conversation with you today, and just getting into a little icebreaker first. We'll get into the numbered narratives segment. So you'll pick your favorite number between 1 and 30, and I'll ask you a fun bookish question that corresponds with the number you picked.
All right, do I pick now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna go 24. That's my age.
Okay, cool.
Mhm.
Um, Question 24 is, ooh, this is a good one. Who is your bookish OTP one true pairing?
Ooh, okay, this is a really good one. I feel like I read a lot of like contemporary literary fiction about young women in like very unhappy and unhealthy and toxic relationships. So I can't say that I'm
That's
right.
so real.
I will say that I have felt particularly called by like female friendships in literature. Um, I guess like I would have to think on one in specific, but like I think that like the friendship at the heart of like my brilliant friend, like that whole like quartet is like really powerful to me and it's something that drove me to write a lot. So I would say that's my OTP in
Oh my
literature.
gosh,
The
I
female
love
friendship at the
that.
center of my brilliant friend series.
I love that you gave a friendship because I'm such a true believer in that friendships are just as important and can be just as deep and rich and complex and meaningful as romantic relationships. And I love that answer. What about those friendships or that friendship do you feel like makes it your one true pairing?
I mean, I think that there are a lot of beautiful female friendships in literature, but I think like um the rigor and attentiveness with which like the complexities of the women's relationship is rendered over the years like it does feel very romantic, like there's like a courtship, there's like a push and pull, like there's an energy transfer between them. They also do each other quite dirty at different times. I
Mm.
think that like that I think attentiveness, yeah, to like the ways that women's relationships like can feel complex and change over the years was just so beautifully rendered in that series. And I think like relationships between women is like probably my number one artistic theme as well. So like I have to like shout out the OG, I think, in that regard.
Oh, I love that. And that's definitely something that I noticed in all the yellow suns. And I think that one of my I think I must have messaged you about this after I read the scene, but I one of my favorite things was there is that kind of near the end of the novel, and I mean throughout as well, but you really see how the protagonist's friends are there for her in different ways. And it was just so lovely to read that. I am really excited to ask you, because this podcast is all about, inspiring other creatives and also readers, especially when we might not see many examples of authors or characters that look like us in media. I would love to hear about your journey to becoming an author and specifically how being a queer South Asian American has influenced it and shaped it.
For sure. I mean, I have been writing for as long as I can remember. This has been something that I have wanted to do since I was a little kid. Like, this has been my number one artistic medium. Something that I think often about writing is that it's also such an accessible one to get started. Like, I joke that I started like library card in a dream. Like, it is something that can be self-taught and like can be worked on in secret. Also, for my friends who are trying to get into writing now, like, it's a job that's very easy to like steal time from your company to do because you're just typing on your laptop. Like I do think that it's a medium that like for a lot of people is very accessible, which is what drew me to it in the first place. Um, but I guess like I started writing more professionally like towards my later teens. I started seeing writing actually when I first started writing publicly, it was not the writing that I did for pleasure, which as a teen was honestly kind of just like shitty fan fiction. But I wrote for my high school newspaper, and then when I was 16, I had an essay in HuffPost that went viral about my experience leading my high school's walkout against gun violence. I'm from Orlando, Florida, which, like, as listeners might know, has like that entire state, the South, and also this country just has like a horrific crisis of racialized gun violence that I felt very called to like help organize against in small ways when I was in high school. So when I first started writing publicly, it was about gun violence, and I viewed storytelling as like a tool for change. And this is, of course, some like the gun violence movement in itself is something I have like more nuanced thoughts on years afterwards. But yeah, so I was doing it in that way. And then as I started realizing like, oh, like, hey, like I can write something like it will trigger men, like people will read it, like it will mean something to people, it will wave hello to people who might be experiencing something similar, it will give people permission. It kind of changed from something I did alone, like in my bedroom late at night, to something I started viewing as like a public facing thing. So in my teens was when I first started writing more like on the novel length. Like I did like YA literature at first. Like you read All the Yellow Suns, which is a book that's very dear to my heart that I wrote during the pandemic. And I say is the book that like taught me how to write a book and kind of like gave me the confidence that like this is what I want to do. And I also in college had the chance to really focus on reading literature, particularly literature from traditions that I was very proud to identify with, such as like various like American writers of color, South Asian literature, queer literature, which I had just not had exposure to as like a younger person. So I feel like all of those forces kind of came together. And in recent years, like as I, really enter adulthood and think about like my long-term career as a writer, I'm really excited to have gotten to make my transition into like literary fiction. Um, Manifesting this right now because I'm working towards making it happen, but like I would really love to start like making more of an entrance into nonfiction as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I'm just like exploring like the new genres and the possibilities that are ahead of me. But I feel like me and my writing practice are like this, like we're locked in. So I feel
Oh,
excited that this is kind of like what I want to do with my life.
I love that so much. I have so many questions that are bubbling from what you just said, but just you ended with talking about your writing practice. So could you talk a little bit more about that and how that has like solidified? What is your writing practice?
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, my writing practice is so dear to me, and it's something that I have like chosen, especially in like the past year of my life, to make like the center of my life in many ways. Like I
Oh,
think like on a very logistical, time-wise level, like I made like a risk to try to be a full-time creative in the past 6 months, and to not
wow.
have a real job, not because like I'm opposed to labor, which I'm not. Like part of actually how I support myself as a writer now is like I write freelance, but I also babysit and tutor. So like I do think that like being a working writer is obviously something that I take pride in and is like you have to do. But at the same time, like I made a choice that like where my heart and my brain energies is centered is towards my writing career. So I think like moving to New York was also a big part of my writing practice because now like I'm in like physical community with so many other writers. Like my like writers are always coming into town. Like me and the girls are always at book talks. Like we're always getting drinks. I'm like in writing groups with other people. I have friends whose novels I have seen in the Google Doc stage that I know are imminently going to be on bookshelves. So it's like really exciting that I feel like I moved here and I chose to kind of like put myself in a place where I thought like all the forces would kind of be conspiring behind me becoming a writer. And I think like more of like on like the craft and intellectual side, like I read a lot. Like I feel like I'm watering my garden all the time with the things that I read. I'm like a very like picky and selective reader. Like I feel like I like know what project something I'm reading for is like going to incubate. And also like this is like the hardest part and the part that feels like silly to say, but you really just have to do it. Like I have sat down and spent a lot of unglamorous time moving in silence, like years, like writing my novels. And like I do like put myself in the humiliating position of like my friends and I call it popping our pussies, but like putting my face on Instagram.com like every couple days to like say something pithy on the stories or like to try to like drop a banger on Substack or like God forbid, like run my mouth on TikTok for a little bit. So I feel like I just like continuously throw things at the wall because I understand this intuitively and I feel like we're seeing this more like openly talked about even with like artists like Dochi who have really given us a window into like her amazing trajectory as an artist from doing the artist's way, like drop being fired from Chipotle to making it as a writer or as a rapper. I've kind of learned that being an artist does mean that you have to do unglamorous things and put in the work and like work very, very hard on your craft.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about, so it sounds like there's been a huge transition in your life recently and
Yeah.
pursuing a full-time writing thing and also, the transition from moving, being in school and then moving towards being in New York, but you did write your first novel in the pandemic. And so I'm really curious as to how you kind of reflect on those changes. Like how was it like writing the first novel versus writing the second novel?
Yeah, no, I've written in super different conditions. Like, yeah, my YA novel, All the Yellow Suns, I wrote during the pandemic, which for everyone was like a global catastrophe. And I feel very privileged that even though it was mentally my rock bottom, it also was the time that was given to me by the universe to write. Like, the pandemic was not a writing residency by any means, but like, I really felt like I saw that like when the rest of the world shut down and I was looking inward, it was like literature and writing that felt like the place for me. So yeah, I taught myself really how to write during the pandemic. And like I like sometimes look back on like my Google Docs from the time period like I started keeping a diary then, which was like actually probably my number one tip for a writer is having like a writing practice of a diary, which is not the same as a journal. I think journaling is where people go to like process. In my diary, like I tell stories. Like I'm like you will not believe what just happened, and I will like tell the kinds of like stories that I'm naturally telling my friends. Like I will just make sure that I am staying attuned to kind of like the narrative richness of my own life and the things that are going on. And it is a daily writing practice of like writing a story, even if it's just for me that I know I'm going to find funny. So during the pandemic, I started my actual diary and I also started my writing diary where like I would like take notes on all the books that I had read. Sometimes it would just be like what I had read, but if it was a book that for some reason really stood out to me as like a possibility model for my own work, either like thematically or craft-wise or the way it was structured, I would basically give myself, I guess, like a mini like creative writing lesson and I would like go through and like paragraph by paragraph or like chapter by chapter of the book, like how does this book structurally function? Like I remember like certain books that I like really read and dissected, like The Idiot, which is the number one comp for my forthcoming novel, Unprecedented Times. Like I remember taking notes on that book. I was like, how did Elif do it? Like, how does she draw in and out of scene? Like, what is okay? What are the rules of the game? And I felt like I gave myself a chance to really study that from other writers. And I would also just write down sentences from books that I really liked. And like in doing that, I kind of like trained my brain to start writing in that rhythmic fashion. So yeah, I feel like I spent some time during the pandemic really kind of studying. And around then was when I wrote All the Yellow Suns. And I feel like it was like my first time writing kind of like a more like serious, like contemporary literary novel. The learning curve was so steep with it. Like I remember that book was just hard. I mean, like it was fun, but it was hard. Like it was hard in the way that like doing math is hard. Like it was like a logistical and technical challenge. It was also like an endurance challenge. Like, can you keep your ass metaphorically in the chair for that long, like without dropping the ball? Like I learned how to plot, I learned how to write scene, I learned how to write even like good sentences. Like skills of mine that I take for granted now that I can do. Like I just could not do then and I had to learn. And I remember this moment where like the gap between like my taste, which I had accrued through all this reading, but my skill set, it was a noticeable gap. It was a gap you could fall into. And like I knew that like I would bridge it, but it was going to take work. And I felt the same way when I started my novel Unprecedented Times too, because like by that point I had already sold all the Yellow Sun. So I was like, okay, like this is for real. Like I am a writer. Like I am writing books that people are going to read. Like this is not a hobby for me anymore. It was the same thing of like back to the mat. Like I know who my role models are in this genre. Like I know what my intervention is. Like I just need to execute as well as I can. So that book I finished last year, and now I feel like back to the mat again. Like I want to write another novel, which I'm actively working on right now, which is kind of what I gave myself permission, or what my book deal, let me say, gave me permission to do. And I'm also trying to set myself up to write nonfiction now, so to like grow in a different genre.
That's amazing. And that's such a journey to like go on. And I'm really curious, you say you talk about that gap between, the stuff that
Mhm.
you were reading and that you wanted your work to be like and where your skills were at. And I'm really curious, how did you bridge that gap? You've talked about reading a ton, but especially with your first novel, uh, I'm really curious, one, how long did that process take for you to write from like start to finish?
Yeah.
And also, amidst that, when you kind of were realizing those gaps, was it just reading comparative titles, or was it also, did you take any classes of any sort? How did you get yourself there?
Yeah, so feel I don't want to say that I'm self-taught because that makes you sound so conceited, but like I will say that most of the meaningful work that happened in my writing education was me with books that I admired, like reading them and taking notes to understand what made them function.
Yeah, and
Um,
reading like a writer is so different, and something that I have been exploring a lot recently as well. And
yeah.
you described it so well in this really tangible way. It's like
Yeah.
looking at sentences and how things transition, and that's really
Yeah,
amazing.
no, I'm like a nerd for sure. And like something I think about all the time is like Mindy Kaling, when she came to my Stanford class in 2024, gave like our class some advice where she was like, people were always like, oh, like what made you become a comedian, like as an Indian person? And she was like, no, like I studied for this shit. Like I trained for that with the same intensity that all y'all other bitches are training for like the MCAT or like the LSAT. And I felt the same way. Like I did train for this. Like I did sit down and like read books and like commit myself to understanding how they would work. And I did take some creative writing classes in undergrad. I did not find them particularly helpful. Like, no shade, I think, to like creative writing classes themselves. Like, I think that that kind of community can be like so wonderful. I think that having writing community is important, but it's important that the other people in your community are trying to do the same thing as you. So like
Mhm.
right now, for example, like the people who I guess would be like in a workshop environment with, all of which is like self-created, are my friends who like are readers who are trying to write novels. Whereas like I felt like it was not that helpful, I guess, in like more of like the undergraduate setting when people like all had totally different goals with what they wanted. Like for some people, it was like it was like for fun, which absolutely should be for fun. I have other artistic mediums that I do for fun that I'm like not trying to like go pro at. But I think this one I did feel that way. But what I did find super helpful was actually taking literature classes as opposed to creative writing classes. I took mostly history and literature classes in college, and I felt like that trained me to do kind of what I thought was needed, like to like read the greats, like understand them in their context, like have sort of like an intellectual situation that I could be writing from because I think you need to have thoughts before you can translate them into fiction. Like I felt like my brain grew like in 100 different directions from especially from like the South Asian shout out specifically to like the South Asian studies and like the Black feminist studies that I like did. Like classes in those genres were probably the most influential to me. Um But yeah, I feel like I just really spent a lot of time reading and it is like a fight. Like I want to acknowledge that like all of our attention spans are like totally fried. Like mine is so cooked, but like trying to like fight for it whenever possible, I think has been so important to the writing practice as well.
I love that. And it's really interesting. I relate to what you're saying about I'm actually in a graduate writing program right
Oh,
now. And
cool.
I actually did not, thank you. But I didn't take any creative writing classes in undergrad.
Mhm.
And what's been really fascinating to me is that you're talking about writing workshops and how important it is that the writers around you have the same sort of goals. And I do really struggle with that in my graduate writing program because I do feel like there's the best feedback I get and from on my novel is often from the friends that I have who are outside of the program who are also writing with the same intention of like getting our voices and our stories heard and writing about
Mhm.
social justice and all of these things and the type of feedback I get from them is so different as somebody who's like already well versed in those things versus the feedback I get in workshop, which is not to say that that feedback is not
For sure.
valuable, but I also really appreciate the way that you pointed out
Yeah.
how those South Asian and Black feminist classes were like so integral because you were mentioning learning from the greats, and I think something that is often really difficult in college that I was like frustrated within the English department that was at my school was there weren't a
Mhm.
lot of opportunities to learn from
That's that.
outside of that like white Western canon. And I'm like, that's really not relevant to the type of work
Yeah,
that I'm trying to
for
do.
sure.
And I just think that's you really pointed out something that can be so important is to, when you're writing from the margins, maybe like take yourself out of like all of that like Western colonized perception of greatness that you have learned when it comes to literature. Because I know it took me a while to get out of that myself because I wasn't taught a single Asian American author until I was in college. So um, I'm really curious. You mentioned that you are now kind of exploring nonfiction as well. And I'm curious as to, how that happened and what you're really, I know you've written articles for various publications, but I'm curious. It sounds like you're working on like a longer nonfiction work. I'm curious what that
Mhm.
is, what you want to share about that, and also going into how that is integrating into your daily routine and your writing practice.
Yeah, I mean, I have been doing nonfiction. Like I mentioned before, like my first public writing was nonfiction. It was like a personal essay. Yeah, it's a genre that I have been wanting to like get into. Like I am a thought daughter. Like I do say what I have to say, like in the shorter form, like on TikTok, on Substack all the time. And I just really adore the nonfiction genre, especially kind of like the feminist essay genre. Um,
Hmm.
one of my projects for the last month, and like I'm really trying to not get the evil eye and only say this to the universe as a manifestation, but I really want to sell an essay collection. Which is like I wrote a book proposal for that I'm super excited about. So I really hope someone buys it for like $1 squillion. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that with most things, like I'm driven to a project by a feeling of usually three feelings. One is like awe, like I saw someone else do it in a way that was so spectacular that it made me want to do it.
Uh-huh.
A feeling like I just have something on my chest that I have to say, which usually comes from some crazy shit just happened. Like for unprecedented times, that was the pandemic. For
Mhm.
all the Yellow Suns, it was like, yo, like I grew up in Florida where no one was gay and like they were shooting all the time. Like it's just always like some sort of experience that I am like driven to process through writing. And then the third is low-key spite. Like sometimes like I see what kinds of books are being out there and I get the sense, like again, like to quote Trump, like we're not sending our best. Like I get the sense that like I could do that too. Like it's like the
Yeah.
opposite of imposter syndrome. It makes me sound insane, but it's like when you
No, it doesn't.
yeah, yeah. I have reverse imposter syndrome the longer I stay in this, that like and I actually think that none of us have any business having imposter syndrome right now when like like the tides are turning against like us DEI girls, against queer people, and like fascism is at the door. Like now is really
That's what
not
my
the time
favorite
for us
professor says as
to be
well.
precious and be like, oh, like haha, like I need to like cook a little bit longer first. Like you don't have time to cook. Like I actually think that like the things that we have to say now are like urgent and like necessary and like I do not feel like biding my time that much more.
Yeah. I think that's a really important message because I think that something that often, growing up with not that much representation and not that much not seeing ourselves in the media, like that imposter syndrome is so much greater, when especially when you're starting out. And I have only like recently in the last couple of years started taking myself really seriously as a writer, and I am still really struggling with this. And every time I bring this up to my favorite professor, she's like, girl, just look at the world right now. You absolutely just like have no business having imposter syndrome. And it's exactly for the reasons that you said, that like, one, think about all the people who are getting published and think about the quality of their writing. Look at the quality of their writing, especially those cis white men, and just think about and who's in power, how like all the things that are combining together in the world right now to give certain people power. And you're really going to say that, like, I don't know, just like go on this spiral of like, oh, I'm not good enough. Like you're giving into what the world is trying to make you feel right now. um, and so I think it's what you said about that is just really important. And I'm curious if you have any advice for, I mean, one, just talking about how it was within your, brown family, making
Mm.
this your career, and also just like advice for other, just writers writing from the margins who maybe just like are coming from a similar space of
Yeah.
imposter syndrome, of not seeing themselves. Like what is your story there? And also,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that question is one that I get every single time. And I am really kind of like, it's a very valid question. And I am also excited to get to a point in my career when I'm just like old enough that people are no longer like, what does your mom think? Because I'll be like, girl, like I'm 30. Um, I mean, this question was asked to me at some effect at my All the Yellow Suns book launch when my parents were in the audience and everyone was like, yeah, like what do your parents think? And I was like, oh, well, I mean, you can ask them. Like, I guess like what I will say is that you should not go into being an artist of any sort if you are afraid. Like that's just not the career path for you. Like I don't think that it is possible to give people like the idea that like unless you're very lucky to have like a family that is like super understanding and accepting, like it is it is a hard life. Like I think that choosing to swim upstream if you are doing something that is against what your culture like traditionally thinks is acceptable or like being gay or whatever, like that is hard. And like I would like never tell someone that they are able to girl boss their way out of that or like I think it is truly like a lot of luck. And I have more nuanced thoughts on like whether it's possible to like repair and push relationships over time. Like I absolutely think it is, and that's something that I've done in my own life as well. But like I don't know. Again, like I think that I tend to have a lot of very polarizing takes. I don't know if it's just like a very Gen Z thing, but my thought has always been at some point stand up. Like you do have to stand
Yeah.
up. Like the age and the condition for that varies. Like people have very different financial situations. Like ability is also a part of it. Like there's just many things that factor into how much you can just choose to do your own thing.
Yeah,
Um, but like to
totally.
the extent that it's possible, I feel very strongly, and this was the thesis of my recent viral essay about being a lesbian, that at some point we do have to choose in our lives whether we are going to align ourselves with, like possibility and which also comes with fear, or like the shitty parts of the status quo, which also offers safety. So I guess that's what I would advise like other like queer South Asian creatives is like if you're scared of your parents, like that's so valid, but at some point like stand up.
Yeah.
And you may find that it is so much better to be yourself. I always think it's better to live as yourself than to try to like hide. Because then you're suffering twice. Like you're not getting to be gay and you're scared. Like at least now you get to be gay, you know? Um,
Yeah.
so I guess like I think there's that. Like I to the extent that it's possible, I encourage people to like practice courage in their own life because like literally nobody ever said that being gay or being an artist was like going to be easy.
Yeah.
And I think that I also like encourage people that like we are all responsible for like giving ourselves new forms of like possibility. Like some of like the like people that I consider to be like my lineage and ancestors are in addition to like my lovely actual family, like it is like other queer writers. Like there's a reason that like found family is such a big part of like queer culture too. Like you do need to find your own role models like outside of like maybe like where you were born and like that can be a really exciting journey.
Yeah, I think that's just so important. And also I think it's okay to be scared, but I think at a certain point you decide. Like I won't say that in me choosing this path, I'm just completely free of fear. And by choosing path, I mean choosing the path of being a writer, not being gay is not a choice. But I mean choosing the path of being out and proud and of, pursuing writing. I won't say that I am, just not scared all the time. I feel like I am scared a lot of the time, but I think there's this exactly what you said of like I had to choose a time to stand up, and the conditions in my life at that point where I chose to do that like converged into I'm not going to say it was easy because it wasn't that like, oh,
Yeah.
everyone's
So shout out
supportive
to you.
now. And now I'm choosing nope, there was a lack of support in many different areas, but at a certain point, when other conditions are right, you do just have to, I think, stand up and do the thing that you want to do, because it's really difficult to live your life constantly for someone else, and everyone has a different situation. But it is, I really respect what you said, and
Thank
I think
you.
that is really great advice.
Thank you.
Um, I'm really curious. This is something that, I feel like you don't speak on very often, but
Mhm.
speaking of growing up and, the beginning of your writing journey, you did have another book that you wrote
Mhm.
when you were in high school.
Yeah.
And there was some controversy that happened around that book. And also, on the other hand, it's also so amazing that you like were, growing up just like already writing novel length works. That's amazing. And so I am really curious, like, to hear your perspective on how that shaped your writing journey, and also the relationship you have with publishing, that originated from that book going on towards today.
Yeah, I mean, no, like shout out to my middle grade first book. Yeah, I wrote a middle grade book when I was in high school, and I submitted it to a bunch of teen writing competitions at that point. Like I grew up I had went to high school in a like place in Florida where there just wasn't like any like attention for creative writing. Like there weren't any other writers. We didn't have creative writing classes, but like I had this like vague sense that I wanted to be a writer and that I also wanted to get out of state for college. So I remember I had like really pushed myself to be applying for like scholarships and programs. And like one of the programs that I submitted it for is called Scholastic Art and Writing, which like shout out crazy alumni list. And the book that I had written, which was like it was good, but I have to say it was written by a 16-year-old, so there was like a cap on how good it could be, won that award, and that gave me a lot of confidence to start submitting it. So when I was 16, I started like emailing agents, and I remember like nobody
Wow.
responded to me because it was also like, to be fair, like not a great book. Like I'm not like throwing like shade on myself. But I do say this with a little bit of like irony, knowing that I am a very young writer. And I have just said that you need to stand up and do the thing and you should not have imposter syndrome. But like I think it's also true that your first book, like that to me is my first pancake book. Like I
Hmm.
think it was a very good middle grade book. Did it need to get published? Probably not. And that was what the universe was telling me. And I had actually self-published it at that point. Like I had been like, yeah, like I just want this book to be read by my friends. So I self-published it, and right after I self-published it, like 2 months later, like some indie press that I had like emailed when I was like literally like sending barrages of emails, was like, hey, like we really like this book. They paid me an amount of money that is too embarrassingly low for me to like disclose. Um, but I was really excited just to like have a book come out with like a real press. I was also the
Yeah.
first non-white author they had ever published. And like
Wow.
I had mentioned like I didn't have an agent, like none of that. Like this was like truly came out of left field, but I went with it. And I'm very proud of myself for like responding and saying yes to that opportunity and having written a book. And yeah, I did get dragged on the internet for it. That was like one part that I was not expecting. Um, and like I think that the something that I just did not handle with a lot of nuance that I wish, not that I wish, because like what could I have known at that age, but that like the portrayal of writing about South Asia, I did not eat down. Like crumbs were left. I was not expecting those crumbs, and this is like very old lore that I didn't think about it until I saw it in your email. I got like some various allegations from some Goodreads reviewers, like this is Islamophobic, which was like unfortunate because I had not intended this middle grade book to be a commentary on like geopolitics. This is queer baiting, which you know they were right about that. They clocked me a little bit sooner than I clocked myself. And
I
like,
actually hadn't heard that one.
well, yeah, that one. And then I can't remember what the other allegations were. I got a bunch of allegations, and like this was during COVID, so I was like losing my mind. And like I was also losing my mind because I was like, you people who are bullying me, you guys are like in your 20s. Like, let's calm down. Like, I am an 18-year-old girl. Like, I am being bullied by people my age or older. Like,
I was going to bring that up because I thought that was like a really ridiculous
yeah,
element of
I
it.
mean, no tea, no shade. Like, something I think about, I mean, I wasn't that hurt, honestly. Like, I grew up in Florida. I was a gun violence girl. Like, you cannot scare me. Like, I am not scared of a keyboard warrior. Like, no one knows where I live. No one's gonna jump me. Um, I like, of course, like did want to like learn to practice like I guess like humility and ability to admit that I'm wrong. So I think that if I'm remembering correctly, what I ended up doing was like I wrote like a note on Goodreads, just kind of acknowledging like, hey, like this is what people have to say. Like I'm really sorry and I didn't mean it like that, which is ultimately how I feel. Like I'm sorry for like the harm caused in that world. But also I'm not gonna hold you. Like I think that like a tiny book by a 17-year-old girl for an indie press is probably not on the top 100 war crimes that have been committed like in this decade. Like I don't I hold some grace for myself while also acknowledging that that was a first pancake book.
Yeah.
Um, but I definitely feel that like what that book did for me was more just like teach me like what we were talking about earlier, like the stamina of like sitting down
Yes,
and being
that
able
makes
to write a
sense.
book. So then when I came back to the map to write All the Yellow Suns, which to me like is kind of like my real first book because it was the first book that like I stand by and I was also like treated right for and that like it sold like following kind of like I do feel a little exploited by that first book deal. Like I'm not gonna lie,
You
like I didn't
do.
have an agent. I was 17. Like my publisher was not equipped to like
Oh, yes, that one, the
yeah,
middle
like I
grade
was
one.
not like they
Yeah.
were not really equipped. Like there are things that are in place now, like sensitivity readings that like a larger publisher would both have the funding for and even know to do. Um, like I think that that was a little bit of a to the wolves situation. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, I felt so much more grateful like the second time around. Like I also felt that like I had written something that felt so true to me in my experience that I could really stand 10 toes down on it. Like
Yeah.
it's not like this is fiction and like you can and I think should say whatever you want and you should push people and it should be morally ambiguous. And like there are things that I said that I am sure were a little out of left field. Like I remember at the time, like I got my best friends to read the manuscript of All the Yellow Suns, and I was like, guys, like please look for anything that like some like person online could cancel me for, and like let me know so I can clean it up, you know?
No, and I think like especially given what happened with your first book, I think that was I was really curious on your perspective on like things like cancel culture because as I've been a book reviewer online since I was 13,
Mhm.
so it's been over 10 years now,
Yeah,
and
that's
I have seen so much of that, and it's something that I often disagree with other book reviewers on,
Mhm.
in which I just feel like, and I actually feel like this goes into something very deep that the left, I feel like, is doing very wrong. Um, And that is canceling people. I think if you are approaching like, and it's like the difference between calling in and calling out. Like literally, like you mentioned, there's like these 20-year-olds or like going after this like book that this girl wrote when she was 16 and saying that, you know, she doesn't know all of like the nuance of this conflict, which how could she? Um, and like, I think that's true of like every scenario. There is never a scenario where one person can always know the nuance in every single issue because they only have so much lived experience. And it is impossible to do like know every other lived experience. And so I
Yeah.
just find it so frustrating when people like, obviously, like J.K. Rowling is a different situation, but
Yeah.
I think we should really be paying attention to how we call people out and how we call them in and then like also like base how we feel about them based on how they respond and how they learn and
Yeah.
grow.
So you're digging up like really deep memories for me. Like I honestly have not thought about this in a while. I'll say first, I don't feel like I got canceled. Like they clearly didn't get me. Like I'm alive, I'm well, like I'm still writing books. And I'm not gonna lie, they had a point. Like that book was not great. Like that's what I'm trying to say. Like I did not need to get dragged like that, but I can concede that that book was a first pancake. It needed some more work. I don't
Yeah.
blame myself. I just think that I did not have the support system for various reasons at that point to do better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but that being said, like I think it's true that like there are the YA sphere at that time, and I left Twitter for this reason, was just so messy. Like people were not being kind to each other. Um, I have like some private and mean and maybe not podcastable thoughts on this situation, but like I will say that like I think that a lot of people, particularly during COVID, and I say this as a young person who also did not have a fully developed prefrontal cortex at that time, I used to drag people online. I don't do that anymore. Like, I do think that there are simply more mature ways to handle it. And I can recognize that for a lot of people online, speaking out online can be an outlet for other feelings that are maybe not being directed in a way that is the most effective or aligned with our principles. And I can't
Yeah.
even hate the players, because I used to do that too.
Yeah.
But that being said, so the controversy, I mean, I feel like you can't say controversy when like six people were involved, but like that went down. But then when my for real YA debut, All the Yellow Suns got released, someone like made a 6-part Twitter thread and was like, hey, like Malavika is back. Like we need to make sure she doesn't get supported for XYZ reasons.
Whoa.
And the allegations were crazy. They were like, she wrote the show Never Have I Ever, which like no,
What?
that was Mindy. Like let's let that one lie. It was like she turned off her comments on Instagram because she doesn't want to get disagreement. Like no, I turned them off because I was getting sexually harassed within an inch of my life at that point.
Oh
Because
my
this
God.
is like crazy lore, but I used to have twice as many Instagram followers as I do now because Mia Khalifa reposted something that I did, and like all of her hordes of like horny male followers came onto my account, and they all dropped off once they like realized I was gay, I guess. But there
Oh
was a
my
time when my
gosh.
comments were off, you know? I was like 19, like I was
Yeah.
being told crazy things by men online, like whatever. And then they were like, yeah, and she's like super problematic and has like evaded accountability, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, and don't support her YA book. And I'm not gonna lie, my blood pressure rose. Like I was like, oh shit.
Yeah. How could it not?
And then like my girlfriend at the time said something which is like, this is I know gonna be inflammatory, but I'm just gonna repeat it. She was like, listen, like you just have this is so bad. She was like, you just have what these people want. Like you get pussy, they don't. Just like come here and like give me a hug. And I just like gave my girlfriend at a time a hug, and I'm like, no, the people in my life love me. Like people online, like whatever. But then I was like, I'm not gonna actually let that lie. So then I DM'd the person who wrote this 6-part thread about me, and I was like, hey, I was like, I saw what you've been saying about me, and I was like, we really like I would actually love to have a conversation with you. Like I think we have a lot in common. Like we're the same
Yeah.
age. We're both South Asian women. Like, do you want to just call? Like I'm here.
Yeah.
No one wants to call with the person that they've been dragging. Like immediately this person is like, no, like I like don't want to call. And I was like, okay, but like can we like clear some of this stuff up? And I kind of explained how I felt like about some of the allegations. And I was like, what can I do to make this right? Because like I don't want us to fight. Like there's really no reason for us to fight.
Yeah.
Um and like we talked it out, and they like deleted some of the parts of their Twitter thread and like apologized. And then I was like, no, but like listen, like I see that people are hurt, so like I'm gonna like write something because like I do want to like I don't want to fight. Like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
last thing I want to do is be fighting with other brown girls, you know?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think I think that's what was frustrating from the outside, not knowing all the details. I was like, it looked like a lot of these brown girls, a huge group of brown girls taking down this other brown girl
Yeah.
for doing something that
Well, I mean,
like
brown girl and brown girl crime is a time-honored tradition. Like I'm not hurt by any means. But sorry, I interrupted.
no, no, no. And sorry, I didn't mean to say taking down in the sense that you were taken down, but like just taken down in the sense of like, going after you, and like trying to get people to not support you.
Yeah, I mean it's really okay. Like it did not work and like I feel like I learned a lot from that scenario that like if like hopefully not if someone comes at me again, which I actually don't think is likely to happen. But like if they do, like I learned something. I was like first of all, I need to like emotionally regulate myself in the fact that there are people off the internet who love me and see me as a full person.
Yeah.
Number two, people who are yelling on the internet will back down if confronted is not the word, but even like if when they acknowledge your humanity because you're not just
Yes.
a person online, but you DM them and you're like, hey, like this hurt my feelings. Like, can we talk about it? Like they will generally back down or at least change up their tone.
Yeah.
And lastly, like I do think that like some sort of like way of repairing it is possible. Like I could see that there were people for whom, and it's not like I necessarily owed them something, but I wanted to. Like, I did want to write a statement because, like, I could see that people genuinely were oppressed, and like, I did not want to be causing,
Yeah.
like, clearly I'm causing some sort of pain because why else are they sitting on their keyboards and tweeting, you know? So, like, I
Yeah.
wanted to, like, address that pain in a way that kind of maintained everyone's dignity. And I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if Unprecedented Times 2026 they pop out and, like, jump me at my book launch, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah. But I do think that's like great advice to share with other people to how to deal with this sort of thing, because I feel like you do never know when it might come up. And like I said earlier, I do think that it is impossible to know and deal with every single issue and nuance. And we do have responsibility as writers. And there are so many other infrastructures in place now, like you mentioned, like sensitivity reading and, other practices that we have brought into our writing. But I did want to thank you for sharing all of that. And also just like reflecting on the situation with honestly such like kindness for yourself and also all the other people involved.
Yeah. No, it's like true. Like I think I said this before, but I think that like having grown up in the gun violence prevention movement when the stakes were like life or death and like the enemies, they were not like people who you agree with on everything, but there's a little personality tiff, but it was like
Yeah.
Republicans who wanted you dead. Like I'm not saying that that is everyone should have that character building experience, but it was mine, and I think that it has like kind of like adjusted my sense of stakes with like what kind of conflicts are worth it and when someone is like actually like on your enemy versus like they're really not.
That completely makes sense.
Yeah.
We're kind of running out of time, so I did want to ask you this one last question that is probably my favorite question to ask every guest. And so this podcast is called Characters Like Us. And based on that title, I wanted to ask you what you would say to someone who sees themselves in the characters that you have written.
Well, I would be like, "Hey girl, like you want to hang?" Because I feel like a lot of my characters are like very much like inspired by experiences that I've had. I'm like super excited and also nervous to see how people respond to unprecedented times. Because, like, I already got a little bit of this with All the Yellow Suns.
Uh-huh.
There's this insane comment in the Goodreads, which I know you're not supposed to read, but like, sue me, like I do. Someone was like, this girl clearly just wanted to write a girl who was just like her, and the book didn't even need to be set in Florida. She just did it because she's from Florida. Like,
Whoa, what?
okay, like okay. But like I just know and like this happens to every young woman writer ever who writes something that is like vaguely trackably based on themselves, like auto
Yep, I know what you're gonna say.
coming in. Um yeah, so I guess I would say if you want to hang with my characters, like hit my line. Like let's be friends. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, you're so right. Like we literally talk about that in like my nonfiction classes in my grad
Mhm.
program is like, let's talk about like why, like literally white men do this literally all the time. Every single writer draws from their personal experiences. And then
For
for some
sure.
reason, it's like the young girl, woman or
Yeah.
just women in general who like get dragged
Scary
for
out
this.
here. One of my mentors advised me, she was like, you need to like tell your legal team at your publisher if anything in the book like could be like construed in any kind of way because yeah, like a mentor of mine had had a very scary experience with her book with like some random, literally some random hoe from the past claiming that one of like the characters that like there's like a sex scene about in the book was like about her and it was like no,
Oh
no,
my
no, no. We're
gosh.
not gonna yeah. So like hopefully that's like not gonna happen, but like I think that that is like a really strange thing that's happening with writing in the internet age.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I wish we could just keep chatting forever. Um, but thank you all for listening to this Characters Like Us podcast. And thank you, Malavika, for joining. It was so lovely to chat with you. And I'm
Yeah.
so excited to chat with you more.
Sure, yeah.
um,
Thank you so much.
and also, you can find Malavika online at malavika.kannan on Instagram and TikTok at Literary Mal. And be sure to look out for her forthcoming novel, Unprecedented Times, which is out in 2026 from Henry Holtz. You can get her debut novel, All the Yellow Suns, from our bookshop page, linked below to support the podcast and indie bookstores. To stay connected with Characters Like Us, follow us on Instagram at Characters Like Us Pod. If you enjoyed this episode and want to support the podcast, consider joining our new Patreon program. As a paperback patron, you'll get access to episode specific reading lists, monthly co writing Zooms, and our community Discord. Or you can become a hardcover hero to receive writing advice from each episode, help shape future guest lists, and get a personal thank you in our show notes. You can find the link to everything I have just mentioned in the show notes. Thank you once again, Malavika, for joining me today. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye.